So where does the difference quotient actually come from? This f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. I want to show you where it comes from and not just tell you, okay, you have this memorized and use it. But say for instance we have an x value. Well, you know that what comes out when we plug it in is the f of x, that's the y value. And then if we have an x plus h value, then the y value associated with that is f of x plus h. So when we talk about the slope of a line, we talk about y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, this is not a line. This is a parabola. So depending on where we are on the graph depends on if, in a sense, we are negative, in a sense, slope, zero slope, or if we come into a positive slope. So it changes. So we don't call it slope anymore. We call it the difference quotient. But we use the same formula. y2, which is this f of x plus h. So we get f of x plus h minus y1, which is f of x, all over x2, which is x plus h, minus x. So those x's just cancel, and we end up with f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Now what is h? H is just a very small number. So we have a number x, and then we take the number x and we add a little bit to it. And as you can see, if we take just this piece of the parabola, that almost looks like a line. So we can find, in a sense, what we say, the slope of that little piece. We call it the difference quotient. So the difference quotient is able to find out every little piece of the parabola during, in a sense, its slope. So is it positive? Is it negative? Is it zero? And as you travel along, as long as you have an x value and another value very close to it, that plus h value, then you can use f of x plus h minus f of x all over h to find the difference quotient. So the difference quotient is the average rate of change. We don't call it slope because it does change and slopes do not. So this is one of the essential definitions in calculus. So if you're going on to calculus, you will need to know it. But we're just going to use the difference quotient, and I highly recommend having a little bit of scratch paper, and I'm going to show you the different pieces as we go through. Well, on number one, we're already knowing what the difference quotient is. The difference quotient, I'm already going to tell you, is 6. Now, how do I know that? Because this is in the form of y equals mx plus b. This is just a line. So if the difference quotient is representing the slope, then the slope of this one is just 6. So I'm not going to do all the work because I already know that the answer is 6. But on number 2, we have f of x equaling x squared minus 4x plus 3. So we're going to have to do the difference quotient. So we're going to have f of x plus h, that'll be in red, minus f of x all over h. Now just so you know, I will give you the difference quotient on the test. You do not have to have that memorized. So on a scratch sheet of paper, I want you to find f of x plus h. Given that we know that f of x equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. So let's go ahead and do the scratch paper. If I want to find f of x plus h, I put an x plus h here and an x plus h there. So we're going to have x plus h, quantity squared, minus 4 parentheses x plus h plus 3. So all we're doing is taking what's inside the parentheses and plugging it in for x. Now how do we do x plus h quantity squared? Well, we have to do x plus h times x plus h. Minus 4x minus 4h plus 3. So we just distribute your negative 4. X times x is x squared. Outer gives me an xh. Inner also gives me an xh. And last gives me an h times h, which is h squared. And I still have minus 4x minus 4h plus 3. Now looking at that, the only like terms we have right now are the xh's. So putting those together, we get a 2xh. Then we have plus h squared minus 4x minus 4h plus 3. So all I've done is found f of x plus h. So in my first part, that is just the red part. So we're going to have a really long line, and this is what it's going to equal. So we're going to come over on this side, and we're going to write the red part. X squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 4x minus 4h plus 3. That is just the f of x plus h part. Now we have to, in purple, subtract off the f of x. Well, what was f of x? F of x was x squared minus 4x plus 3. Still all over h. So what do we need to do? We need to distribute our minus sign and then combine like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and just write above what this is. Negative times x squared is a negative x squared. Negative times a negative is a positive 4x. And negative times a positive is a negative 3. So now this piece is gone, and I have negative x squared plus 4x minus 3. So combine like terms, the x squareds disappear. The 4x's cancel out as well, and the 3's cancel out. So what am I left with? I'm left with 2xh plus h squared minus 4h all over h. So just a hint, you should have everything left with h's. And if you don't, you did something wrong. Now, because there's an h in common in all of them, we're going to factor out an h. So from here, we're left with a 2x. From here, we're left with an h. And from here, I'm left with a minus 4 all over h. So why did we factor out an h? Because now we can cancel out the h's. And so my difference quotient is 2x plus h minus 4. So you really have found something pretty cool in a sense that if you choose an x value and a small h value, you can know, in a sense, the slope, which we don't call it slope, we call it the difference quotient, on this whole parabola as you go through. So you're going to use that in calculus. Right now, we just want to be able to find the difference quotient just by doing the math. All right, so let's go ahead and try number 4. We'll jump to number 4, we'll come back to number 3. So again, I'm going to do it in color so you can see the difference. So number 4, we have f of x plus h. Then we're going to subtract off f of x all over h. So I would always have a little bit of scratch paper because that red part is going to be the longest part. So let's go ahead and take some scratch paper and let's find f of x plus h. So f of x plus h is going to equal, we're going to have x plus h quantity squared minus 5 times x plus h plus 8. Why? Because they told us from number 4 that f of x equals x squared minus 5x plus 8. So I put an x plus h here and an x plus h there. So when I multiply that out, just like on the last problem, we ended up with x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Distribute your negative 5, so negative 5x minus 5h plus 8. And that's the red part. So you'll be able to get to it a little bit quicker every time when you realize that x plus h quantity squared turns out to be the same thing every time. So x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 5x minus 5h plus 8 is just the red part. Now I need to subtract off the original function. My original function was x squared minus 5x plus 8. So x squared minus 5x plus 8. And I'm still all over h. So could we write it? I'm just going to distribute my negative above. So negative x squared plus 5x minus 8. So now this is gone. And then I will combine like terms. So my x squareds cancel, 5x's cancel, 8's cancel. And I'm left with 2xh plus h squared minus 5h all over h. Again, to make sure that I'm knowing that it's correct, I see that there's h in common in all of them, so I'll pull out an h, and I'm left with 2x plus h minus 5 all over h. Now that I have factored out an h, I can cancel with the h on bottom, and so my difference quotient for this one is 2x plus h minus 5. Again, we're not going to be using it, I just want to make sure you can find it. So we have one more to do. And we haven't done one where there's a number in front, so I definitely want to do this one with you. And then when we get back into class, we will have you do one on your own. So f of x plus h is going to equal what? Well, we have that f of x equals negative 2x squared plus 5x plus 7. So we're going to have to plug in x plus h here and here. So we're going to have negative 2 times x plus h quantity squared plus 5 times x plus h plus 7. Well, let's leave the negative 2 out in front. We know what x plus h quantity squared turns out to be. It turns out to be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Distribute your 5, we get a 5x plus 5h, and we still have plus 7. So last thing is just to distribute in the negative 2. So negative 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared. And you still have the plus 5x, the plus 5h, and the plus 7. So all you got to do is multiply in that negative 2. All right, so don't have enough room on the paper for this one, so I'll just go ahead and do number 3 down here. So our f of x plus h is negative 2x squared minus 4x minus 2h squared plus 5x plus 5h plus 7. Then I need to subtract off f of x. So I need to subtract off f of x. Well, f of x was negative 2x squared plus 5x plus 7. And it's going to be all over h. So then what do? I go ahead and distribute my negative. So negative times a negative would be a positive 2x squared, a minus 5x, and a minus 7. So then now that's going to be gone because I distributed my negative. And then I'll go ahead, 2x squared cancels. The 5x and the negative 5x cancels. And the 7 and the negative 7 cancels. And I'm left with negative plus 5h all over h. So just like on all the other problems, I factor out an h, and I get negative 4x minus 2h plus 5 all over h. Since I took out an h, the h's cancel. And my difference quotient for number 3 would be negative 4x minus 2h plus 5. So be ready to do one of those problems on your own during class.